A lot of familiar faces there, Prateek. This was done, and we got to start. This is one of Prateek's most famous songs, viral on YouTube, Instagram, every reel, every heartbreak. This song seems to really find its way in all our hearts. This video, let's start with that. In the pandemic, was this conceptualized during the pandemic? I mean, this was shot quite effortlessly, work from anywhere for all of us.
Yeah, actually, weirdly, it wasn't conceptualized in the pandemic. I I wrote Kasoor in 2016. We recorded everything, and we had the track ready in 2017. Sorry, 2017, 2018. 2018, we had the track ready, and then we were thinking about putting it out. It went into a lot of delays, and then in 2019, we started conceptualizing a video, which was this. So in the summer of 2019 is when I spoke to Dar and Dheer, who, sent me a bunch of ideas. This was one of them. I saw the idea. I was like, this is awesome. And we were going to do it in a lot more, much more polished way, like send a lot of fans these home videos, but at the same time shoot my portions in a proper studio and stuff like that. Then it got delayed again. I got into touring. 2019 was crazy. And then 2020 happened, and then suddenly the pandemic. And then, suddenly nothing was happening. And then we were talking, and we were like, okay, we can still do this. This is still doable, even though all of this stuff is happening. So, yeah, we did end up making it in the pandemic, but it was, it worked out though.
So, there's always requests for Prateek to sing encore. And if I was to fill in, then the audience would just completely empty their seats. So we'll keep referring to some of his songs on the way, and you'll tell us the story through this entire conversation. But what I want to understand from you, Prateek, is I went through some of your influences, and I did a little bit of RJing back in the day, and I find it fascinating. As a 90s kid, you've covered artists that I've not heard of with most, mainstream artists and inspirations that we see. For instance, the Lumineers, Elliott Smith, Fleet Foxes, Bob Dylan. How much have these artists really shaped and influenced your music?
A lot. I grew up in Jaipur, but most of my musical making, I want to say, just what really formed my personality and how I am as a person, how I think about the world, and which in turn really, bleeds into all the songwriting that I do and the music that I make, all happened really in New York when I went for college. So that's where I was introduced to a lot of these artists. I mean, Elliott Smith, I had a friend who was from Philly, and he gave me a bunch of music one time, and it was in like a hard drive or something, and it had the entire Elliott Smith discography. So I started listening to that a lot, basically. And Elliott Smith is, would be considered folk, more contemporary folk, but folk nonetheless, very folksy. He himself, his influences themselves are like very folksy. That got me into like more folk music. So weirdly, like he was kind of my entrance into the folk world. And then I started listening to a lot of newer stuff around then, which was like the Lumineers, Fleet Foxes, Laura Marling, Mumford and Sons. And then I kind of listened to Bob Dylan after that. I mean, I'd heard Tambourine Man, but I really got into Bob Dylan a little bit later.
The other way around, is it?
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. You mentioned New York, and your time in New York, you were obviously born in Jaipur. You moved to Delhi shortly after, you moved to New York?
New York first. So I grew up in Jaipur. I did my school there. And then I went to New York for college. And then I was just there for 5 years.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because when you were in New York, you were living quite the dream. You studied there, and then you got a consulting job, and then all of a sudden one day, it was an unfortunate day, or was it a fortunate day, shall I say, where you were asked to leave. Did that in any way, I'll tell you why it's very important, to really turn adversity into an opportunity in the tech world, and we often cover things in the news space on the tech world. Today itself, so many people were laid off at Twitter. There's so much talk of it, even in the coming weeks and months. You actually took that opportunity and made it perhaps one of the most massive moments in your life to really switch track.
Yeah, I mean, I think people make a really big deal of, getting fired. I mean, it happens to so many people. It's not a big deal. And more than that, I actually had already been thinking about, so my final year of college, I'd started really seriously considering doing music. But by then, I already had this job. So I was like, let me finish an year. make some money, have a little bit of savings, and then I'll take an year off and do this. Uh, and then midway through, I was asked to leave. So I was obviously, any sort of it always like hits your confidence a little bit. Anything like that happens because obviously you start thinking about like what did I do wrong beyond a point. But I anyway was like, okay, this is a good segue into doing what I wanted to do anyway. So I was like, screw it, I'm gonna go back to India and just try this out for a year, which is kind of what I wanted to do anyway. So I just distracted myself and got into that right away. And that's kind of generally my attitude towards life. Like anytime, and because that's just one of the uh, you know, obstacle or failure, whatever you want to call it, that happened. Because as you just live through life, there's multiple things that happen, right, on the personal front or the professional front that are failures, so to say. But I kind of just don't think about it too much. The way I distract myself is just being like, okay, what's the next thing I can do now, and forget about that as soon as I can.
So there are failures, and then of course, for all of us, there's been breakups as well. A lot of your music has gotten a lot of us by very difficult times, let's just put it that way. All of us really want to know how much is, well, a breakup or a special someone really the inspiration for some of your top tracks?
I'm sure it. So the thing is that I don't really, and I don't know how other artists function, but I don't really think about my inspirations or my experiences so much that directly. I mean, obviously, anything that happens in life that's intense will affect you deeply in some way. And of course, when you fall in love or when you fall out of love, both of those are really intense experiences. So I think that ends up kind of, inspiring things and making you think about. It's just intensity inside. It just like really like spurs that. But that being said, like when I'm writing a song, I'm not really thinking about a particular person or a particular day. I'm just kind of writing, and it's a very stream of consciousness sort of thing. And I might not know the meaning of that song sometimes till many weeks after I've written it even.
You're touring India as we speak. Sold out concerts in Mumbai, Pune, you're heading to Delhi and 15 other cities. It's a 15-city tour. It's been a crazy turnout. Everyone's been posting about it on social media. But so, since you're talking about your inspiration, is there a special someone in Prateek Kuhad's life?
Right now, no.
Yes.
No.
All right. So is this now in the breakup phase where the inspiration comes? No, I'm just messing with you. But it really does matter, Prateek, because you said some of your influences were Elliott Smith. Obviously, he had his inspirations. The Beatles did all sorts of crazy stuff in the lyrical world. And I think lyrics for you are really a game changer. So if I was to do your introduction again, your music is fantastic. The videos are just heartwarming. But would you like to call yourself a songwriter above all?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I've become a good singer over the years because I toured so much. I just toured so much, and every time you tour, you have to rehearse a bunch. So I've just sang my songs just so much, which a lot of people don't do because India doesn't have that intense a touring culture. So you won't see just the volume of shows I've done and the kind of rehearsals we put in is just it's pretty uncommon. Not every musician does it, especially singers. And I think I got better. So I still don't think I'd be very good as a playback singer or a singer per se. I'm good at singing my songs because I know them and I've sang them enough number of times. But if you ask me to sing somebody else's song, it takes me a while to really learn.
But you've absolutely killed it in Bollywood as well. Some of your hits come from
They were my songs.
Ho Gaye Hum Kahan and stuff like that.
But they were still my songs, Like playback singing is like singing something you have no involvement in creating or writing at all. Yeah. And that's still something I find very challenging.
That's fascinating. One song which I think gets all of us going. You get goosebumps as soon as you play it. And why should I keep talking about it? In fact, let's just play a small bit from that song and then we'll get to it because there's a big backstory, Prateek. Can we have that song, please?
I wish I could leave you my love, but my heart is a mess.
we can go on listening to this song.
Just
I'm guessing if we
like
play a little more, Prateek, there'll be demands from the audience saying, please get a guitar and get Prateek to start singing. But there's a backstory which is very important. In 2019, President Obama puts up this tweet with his top songs. Cold Mess by Prateek Kuhad features somewhere in between Bruce Springsteen and other platinum record-selling artists. What did it feel like? What was your first reaction? Did you wake up with a jolt?
Yeah, it was midnight actually when it happened. It was shocking in the best way possible, of course. Somebody just sent me like a WhatsApp message with the link, not even saying anything, just the link. So I'm like, why, why has anybody sent me this? Because nobody does that usually. And it was some random person who I hadn't spoken to in a year, somebody I'd worked with like many years ago and stuff. So I just clicked on it, and then I saw it was the Obama list, and I was like, why have I gotten this? And then like 3 seconds into it, I was like, wait, have I gotten this because by any chance my song's on it? And then I spotted Cold Mess and kind of freaked out. But yeah, it was really cool, man.
You're always a big deal here in the alternative scene. Even in the mainstream, everyone in India was always a massive Prateek Kuhad fan. I know all my friends are as well. But this really put you on the map, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it's more symbolic than anything else because in general, South Asian artists of all sorts, actors or anything, it's rare. There's very few, and it's only started happening recently in the past 5 or 10 years that South Asian artists are even getting kind of into pop culture in general. So in that sense, it was a really big symbolic win, I think.
Prateek, I'm a huge tech geek. I have to understand this. Algorithms considered, do you think President Obama was listening to Spotify, YouTube? How did he discover Prateek Kuhad?
I have no clue.
Or was it some sort of inspiration? Because the rest of the songs were quite workout-centric. This was the one ballad right there.
No, that's not true. I think there was I remember there was like a song from one of my really not very popular, but not super famous, but really nice indie band called, I'm forgetting the name, but her, Adrian Lenker. She, Big Thief. That's what the band calls. It's a really small indie band. That was on the list as well. So he had a really good mix of of course there was, like you said, there was Bruce Springsteen, but there was like a bunch of hip hop and pop. It's a really good mix. But
Old Town Road.
Yeah, that's right.
So those were really popular songs. I think that's a huge achievement for whatever it's worth. You're very modest, Prateek. I've noticed this. You're not very comfortable with compliments, right? I've noticed this in our last hour of interaction.
Yeah, now that you say it.
Everyone who's a Prateek Kuhad fan in the audience, please put your hand up. There you go.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so, but Prateek, I'll tell you why. Because once that puts you on the map, we saw you making more trips to the US. A record company out there signs you up. What was that experience like?
Yeah, that definitely pushed it. We'd actually been talking to Elektra since 2019. So the summer of 2019, I played South by Southwest for the second time, which is this big music conference that happens in the US every year. It's very, that's where all the artists go to get signed. All the music business people go to discover new music. And that's where I met somebody from Elektra for the first time. We were talking for a while, but that definitely pushed the, the thing a little bit. And once that happened, then they immediately reached out and all right, let's sign, So it was good. I've done two records with them now. Shehron Ke Raaz, which was an EP in 2021. Then this year I put out The Way That Lovers Do. Both have been through Elektra. It's great, yeah.
But growing up in Jaipur, I've always been curious. I think that really adds that special sort of USP to your music because you're effortlessly bilingual. And some of your Hindi songs have done really well. And now there's a lot of English songs as well. What's the plan going forward? Are we going to listen to a lot more English music, or is it going to be more Hindi-centric? What's the deal?
No, it's just going to be the same. I mean, when I started putting music out, not a lot of people were doing, most artists were either doing only Hindi music or only English music. And I just felt like, I speak both languages. And I think you'd relate, and a lot of other Indians, especially from, bigger cities, gone to English medium schools. We always know English and whatever our regional languages, usually. So like it's Hindi in the north, and then whatever South Indian languages in the south, or sometimes we know a third regional language. And but all of us are like bilingual or trilingual usually, and very very comfortable speaking both. So for me it was Hindi and English, and I was like, if I can speak and think and write in both languages, why can't I write songs in both? So it's just, I don't really think about it as a, you know, I just think about it as like writing music, basically, writing songs.
It's interesting because if any of us was to watch you live last week in Mumbai or Pune, you seem like this super confident guy with bucket loads of talent. But I read in a recent interview of yours that you were suffering from social anxiety in your early 20s. How did you overcome that and become this super confident performer up on stage?
Yeah, it's taken some work. I was suffering from, I mean, I'm still a little awkward, maybe you guys can tell. But I used to be extremely socially anxious till 2019, pretty much. I think just being thrown into these situations a lot of playing live, a lot of just social situations like fan meets afterwards, and coming to conferences like this, or like music conferences and having to meet people, pushing myself, it just kind of reduced a little bit already. And then the last 1 or 2 years has just changed a lot. I think the pandemic put me in such a shell that I was pretty just annoyed by all of it. And then when I came out, I just felt like I have this new kind of life, because it's just I just felt very grateful for everything being back to normal and getting back to shows again. So I'm at my social peak right now. I don't know how long it's going to last, but yeah, I did, yeah, definitely. I couldn't like I'd be way more quiet in general.
So you would have given me a lot more monosyllabic responses had I asked you these questions?
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
I thought I was doing a good job. But even then, Prateek, you mentioned how you dealt with some of these things. Another thing when you get famous, and especially in this social media world that we live in, where streaming culture is so popular, another thing that technology seems to do is that it's a double-edged sword. Often, when you're getting famous, you got to deal with the critics, not so constructive, so to speak, and the trolls. I'm guessing you've had your fair share of that as well?
Yeah, I mean, you barely find any critics anymore. Critics aren't that bad. Trolls are bad because it's pretty meaningless stuff. And yeah, it happens all the time, man. You just have to like tune it out and get used to it, I guess.
So have there been specific instances where it's really bogged you down? Because we always say that, I'm bulletproof like Sia, but at the end of the day, you got to also know how to overcome it. If there's any sort of advice that you can give a lot of the young people watching who have to deal with this, even if they're micro-influencers nowadays, it can be quite bogging down.
Yeah, it's just getting worse actually, I feel like, because I'm at one of the first generation of artists and stuff who had social media, because I did this through the early 2010s, and that's when really Instagram started and stuff, right? So back then there were really no trolls. It was mostly like friends and friends and friends of friends, and it was a pretty close-knit community, so to speak, in the beginning. So it was mostly just good stuff, And then now it's really become this thing where there's tons and tons of trolls, and I don't know. I don't know how to deal with it, honestly. I think I've just could become immune to it now because it's been happening for 4 or 5 years now, since I've started noticing. Like the first time I got any sort of popularity, it started happening. When I was not very popular, it didn't happen because I had a really small group of fans and everybody was super nice, But eventually, I think I want to say with like Tum Jab Paas, which was like one early hit, it started happening. Kho Gayam Kahan,
But are we going to see you said Kho Gayam Kahan, are we going to see a lot more mainstream music, Bollywood music from Prateek Kuhad?
I don't really think of like music or the stuff I put out as mainstream or non-mainstream. I mean, if you listen to my music, it's not like Ho Gayam Kahan sounds different than anything else, So, and that's the thing, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, and it's not like I don't want to do Bollywood projects or want to do them either ways. It's just I want to keep writing music, and usually the people who reach out to me want me to write songs that they like, which is like my style of music anyway. So it ends up being pretty similar. in that sense, like it ends up always being like my style. So I've never been pushed to write in a direction I don't want to. So there's no mainstream or non-mainstream. And at the same time, I have songs which are like pretty popular. So you could argue that they're mainstream already. So it's just, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Fair enough. A lot of us are drawn to Prateek Kuhad's music when we're in and out of love, millennials and Gen Z, and especially when we're dealing with breakups. I think it's quite the remedy, the panacea for a lot of us. What about Prateek Kuhad, the artist? What about when you're dealing with heartbreak? What do you go to? What's your go-to remedy?
it's been different times in my life, honestly. Like at a point of time, it used to be writing a lot, or just, especially when I started playing the guitar and started writing, I would just generally play the guitar a lot. So it wasn't even writing songs, but just sitting down and playing the guitar and covering a song, doing whatever I wanted. Now it's like, I don't know, I've had a few breakups now, so I think I'm more experienced in that. So I just try to, again, focus on moving ahead more than anything else. Yeah.
Very cool. Very quickly, Prateek, I want to understand, and we can't do justice to this. This needs at least a couple of hours more. What is Prateek Kuhad's songwriting process all about? Because I know often when you're on tour and even when you're traveling, you must record something on voice notes.
Yeah.
And then how does it materialize into the viral monster that it becomes eventually?
It's a mix of, well, for one, it's just doing lots of it. I just, like you said, I'm writing whenever I write, I just write. I never stop myself from writing. So anytime I feel like writing, whether I could be in like a tour bus and I'll grab my guitar from the back and like record a quick snippet if I get an idea. I could be like in a hotel room and I'll finish the song. Sometimes I sit down and put a, schedule to it and write every day for an hour. It's different in different points in my life. I just write a lot. Yeah.
The toughest question, save for the last. I saved the best for the last, guys. And I know you're going to try to skirt it, but very quickly, on the spot, your top 3 songs that you've composed.
That I've made.
That you've actually sung or composed.
Cold Mess, Tere Hi Hum, and probably The Last Time, which is from this new album. Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Candid, modest, understated, and an absolute genius at that as well. Prateek, thanks so much for joining us at the India Today Conclave. Ladies and gentlemen, Prateek Kuhad.